I am not calling for flashy, temporary differences in our performance levels, but a quiet resolve to do a better job, to lengthen our stride.
President Spencer W. Kimball spoke those words in the fall of 1974, and their impact was felt throughout all of 1975. Indeed, in the church's 145th year, the saints seemed touched with a new sense of stewardship, a new attitude of urgency, a new vision of what might be, and new insight into the unique needs of the international church. Missionary work received unprecedented emphasis in 1975. In fact, the prophet's phrase, "lengthen our stride," was applied most directly to proselyting. Other general authorities said much the same thing throughout the year.
The harvest is fully ripe. We are now sent for the last time to gather it in. The sickle is in our hands. We must use it while the day lasts.
Boys like adventure. A mission is the highest type of adventure. Boys want to be led to the Holy Grail. A mission will lead them far beyond that to the exalted Christ.
To improve proselyting and local leadership, U.S. and Canadian missions were divided into 12 areas, with each area supervised by 2 general authorities. By mid-year, a new film, "Go Ye Into All the World," carrying President Kimball's missionary message, was being shown church-wide in many languages.
My dear brothers and sisters, the work is not yet done. The Lord has made it very clear. Go ye into all the world. The time is at hand to go.
Another film with worldwide missionary potential was begun by the BYU Motion Picture Studio. It was to be called The First Vision. By year's end, 21 new full-time missions had been established, bringing the church total to 134. 10 of the new missions were abroad, in Mexico, Chile, Colombia, Belgium, France, Italy, Australia, Indonesia, and Korea. 23,000 missionaries were in the field, a 25% increase over the previous year. Missionary work of another kind was also emphasized.
We're not only to be messenger of salvation to the living, but saviors for our ancestors who went before us, and who, though now dead, have paved the way whereby we might receive our present blessings.
To increase the efficiency of genealogy work, the genealogical department was reorganized into 5 major divisions. Temple attendance records were set, with 500,000 more endowments performed in 1975 than in the previous year. April brought a first in church history. After a year of extensive remodeling, the Arizona Temple was rededicated by President Kimball. One of the purposes of the remodeling was to install modern visual aids to facilitate temple instruction. Over 200,000 people toured the temple before its rededication. Visitors included 500 ministers of other churches.
It was very enlightening, and I enjoyed it thoroughly, and we feel very privileged to have been able to go through this first day and to talk with many of the people who were here. We're quite impressed with the beauty of it and all of the things that were told to us.
In November, the St. George Temple, the first completed after the saints came west, was rededicated. Additions had been made to the north and west sides of the structure, and the building proper had been extensively remodeled.
It's wonderful. The day has been perfect. The Lord couldn't have given us a prettier day than this. It was the first temple west of the Mississippi, and it's the first temple in which all of the ordinances of the gospel that have been revealed are performed.
In November, the First Presidency announced that a temple would be built in Seattle, Washington. It would serve 170,000 church members in the northwestern United States and British Columbia. Brick and mortar evidence of church growth was everywhere apparent in 1975. In May, President Kimball dedicated the New York Visitor Center in downtown Manhattan. It included innovative displays to explain the gospel to non-members, as well as stake, ward, genealogy, and mission facilities. On July 24th, the 128th anniversary of the pioneers' arrival in Salt Lake Valley, the new church office building was dedicated by President Spencer W. Kimball. In Salt Lake City, in December, President Romney dedicated a building with a unique missionary role. Known as the Exhibits Division Building, it would help produce exhibits for visitor centers worldwide. Work went forward on the Language Training Center at BYU. When completed, the huge complex would house 1,400 missionaries and facilitate the teaching of 22 languages. 229 new chapels and seminary and institute buildings were completed during the year. "1975 was a year of important leadership and organizational changes. 4 new assistants to the Council of the 12 were sustained at April conference. Elders William G. Bangerter, Robert D. Hales, Adney Y. Komatsu, and Joseph B. Worthlen. They joined 19 other assistants to the 12, including Al Masani, El Ray L. Christiansen, Sterling W. Sill, Henry D. Taylor, Alvin R. Dyer, Franklin D. Richards, Theodore M. Burton, Bernard P. Brockbank, James A. Cullimore, Marion D. Hanks, Joseph Anderson, David B. Haight, William H. Bennett, John H. Vandenberg, Robert L. Simpson, O. Leslie Stone, James E. Faust, J. Thomas Fyans, and Neil A. Maxwell. Church growth in 1975 continued at an impressive pace. The 700th stake, the Veracruz, Mexico stake, was formed in May. In 2 weekends, 15 new stakes were organized in the Mexico City area. By year's end, stakes totaled 737 and included the first ever in Wales and Sweden. Total church membership was 3,572,202, a 5.5% increase over 1974. Because of substantial church growth abroad, in the spring, the First Presidency assigned 6 assistants to the 12 to reside and function outside the United States as area supervisors. They were Elders Bernard P. Brockbank, assigned to Great Britain, Western Europe, and South Africa; Joseph B. Worthlen, Germany and Central Europe; J. Thomas Fyans, Mexico and Central America; James E. Faust, South America; Adney Y. Komatsu, Japan and Far East; and Robert L. Simpson, Pacific and Polynesian Islands. Later in the year, Elder A. Theodore Tuttle of the First Council of the 70 was also assigned to South America. At October Conference, in another move to meet the leadership needs of an expanding church, President Kimball organized the first quorum of the 70. Members of this quorum, as revealed in Section 107 of the Doctrine and Covenants, were to be traveling ministers of the church. But since the early days of the church, the first quorum of the 70 had had no members other than the 7 presidents who constituted the first council of the 70. President Kimball's announcement made it clear that the quorum and its traveling ministers were now needed to help carry the gospel to the world. Called as members of the quorum were Elders Charles A. DDA, William R. Bradford, and George P. Lee. The 7 presidents of the first quorum of the 70 as now constituted are S. Dilworth Young, A. Theodore Tuttle, Paul H. Dunn, Hartman Rector, Jr., Lauren C. Dunn, Rex D. Pinnaker, and Elder Gene R. Cook was called at this conference to fill a vacancy in the first council of the 70. In April, 2 new counselors were called to serve with Sunday School General President Russell M. Nelson. B. Lloyd Pullman was named first counselor, and Joe J. Christensen, second counselor. Also in April, Gerald Otley, who had been acting director of the Tabernacle Choir, was appointed director. At June conference, the prophet announced the end of an era.
It is impossible for these people to come from these long distances in large numbers, but we can send our representatives to them where many more of the people can have that privilege of meeting the authorities of the church in their respective organizations.
June conference and all other church auxiliary conferences would be discontinued. They would be replaced in 1976 by comprehensive programs to reach the church through stake and mission leaders worldwide. The Relief Society had held 86 conferences in its illustrious history. The sisters, who came in record numbers in October for their final conference, knew that it was an historic moment. An announcement was made at that time that a monument to Latter-day Saint womanhood would be erected in Nauvoo, Illinois, birthplace of the Relief Society. Church education was in the news throughout 1975. In January, the Brigham Young University Hawaii campus awarded its first baccalaureate degrees since its name had been changed from the Church College of Hawaii. In February, during BYU's Indian Week, President Kimball addressed an all-Lamanite audience. The Tribe of Many Feathers, a BYU Indian student organization, gave President Kimball its cherished Elk Skin Award in recognition of his great service to the Indian people. In April, BYU held its 100th commencement, beginning a colorful year-long observance of its centennial. Centennial year programs and activities included an exhibit in the Marriott Center, opening of the Mazer Building Cornerstone, International Folk Dance Festival, first ever held in America, featuring 200 dancers from throughout the world. Dedication of the J. Reuben Clark Law School with U.S. Supreme Court Justice Warren E. Burger and Associate Chief Justice Lewis F. Powell, Jr. in attendance. Establishment of the Ezra Taft Benson Food and Agriculture Institute to improve food quality and quantity. And the Founders Day parade, procession, and convocation. President Kimball dedicated the BYU Centennial Carillon Tower and played the first song on its 52 bells.
He will ring the tower theme and then ring out the old century and ring in the new.
It was a landmark year for seminaries and institutes, and a record number of young people graduated or received certificates from seminaries and institutes, over 25,000 from all 50 states and 50 countries. Ground was broken in Seoul, Korea, for the first Institute of Religion building in Asia. In 1975 was the beginning of the American Bicentennial Year, and the church took an active part in its observance. At June Conference, the Heritage Arts Festival celebrated America's origins. Activities centered on Heritage Square, a turn-of-the-century village erected in the Salt Palace. During the year, over 700 Mormon Vietnamese refugees and their non-member friends and relatives were processed and assigned to sponsors in the United States and Canada. In May, President Kimball visited 70 Vietnamese members at the Camp Pendleton, California processing area. Church members mourned the loss of 3 general authorities during 1975. Elder Milton R. Hunter died June 25th at age 72. His life of devoted church service included 30 years as member of the First Council of 70. He was an accomplished author and historian. He was fond of saying, "I love the gospel of Jesus Christ more than anything else." Elders Hugh B. Brown and L. Ray L. Christiansen died on December 2nd, the first time since the martyrdom of Joseph and Hiram Smith that death had taken 2 general authorities on the same day. The life of Elder Brown, who was 92, was distinguished by exceptional service as a missionary, attorney, military officer, educator, and church leader. He was sustained as an assistant to the 12 in 1953 and as a member of the Council of the 12 in 1958. For 9 years, he was a counselor in the first presidency to President David O. McKay. Elder Brown was a compassionate man who moved thousands of people with the power of his love and oratory.
Brothers and sisters, friends of the air, we humbly but unequivocally declare to you that God is not dead. He lives, and Jesus Christ the Lord still lives.
Elder Christiansen, who was 78, had been an assistant to the 12 for 24 years. Before becoming a general authority, he had been bishop, stake president, president of 2 temples, and president of the Texas-Louisiana Mission. He had lovingly encouraged the saints to reap the benefits that accompany temple attendance. President Benson paid tribute to Elder Christiansen by calling him a great servant of God. In 1975, 7 area general conferences were held, 2 in South America in March and 5 in the Orient in August. Over 5,000 members met in the Anhambi Convention Center in Sao Paulo, Brazil. The Friday evening cultural presentation was inspiring. The conference's most unforgettable moment came Saturday morning.
We will build the 17th temple of the Lord in São Paulo, Brazil.
When I heard of the temple, I had to cry. It is something very special to me to know that there will be a temple here in São Paulo.
When I was listening to President Kimball, I just cried all the time.
I know that this church is true. I know that God lives, and I know that He loves us very much.
We're standing on the temple site for the São Paulo temple in Brazil. There will be a steakhouse a little lower down on the same general property.
In Buenos Aires, 10,000 saints gathered in the Luna Park Sports Auditorium. They had come from Chile, Uruguay, Paraguay, as well as Argentina. For some, attending the conference meant sacrificing 3 months' wages.
We had to sleep on the floor in the train, and then in Buenos Aires we slept for 2, 3, and 4 hours. That was all. But the sacrifice we did was nothing. When we heard the prophet telling us what we have to do in order to get to the temple.
Again, God be with you. Let His blessings be upon you and your families. And the good people of this country that you are going to proselyte.
The members were sad to see the conference end, but they'd been strengthened and inspired. And now they had the promise of a temple in South America.
We have never had the chance to have a prophet here, and this is the chance for us to know him and to see him and to feel him in our lives.
In Tokyo in August, thousands of Japanese gathered in the Nippon Budokan. The cultural presentation featured 2,500 accomplished performers from throughout Japan. At the first conference session, President Kimball made an announcement that was received at first with wonderment, then with weeping.
We therefore propose to you, assembled here, that we establish, build a temple in Tokyo, Japan, for all of Asia.
それで今日皆様方にご提案いたしたいと思います。アジアの皆様方のために東京に神殿を建てることをご提案いたしたいと思います。
Before you vote, we shall show you the preliminary plans for the new temple.
In Tokyo, as he did elsewhere in the Orient, President Kimball asked the members to sustain the proposed temple. After the session ended, a painting of the temple was placed for all to see.
It was extreme joy to me and we saints of Japan, all of them, when President Kimball said Council decided to dedicate a temple for the first time in Asia.
Before leaving Japan, President Kimball, other general authorities, and local leaders and their wives visited the temple site. Scores of Japanese gathered at the airport to say sayonara to the general authorities, to thank them, and to wish them well on the flight to Manila. 18,000 saints, 90% of the Filipino membership, awaited the general authorities at Manila. The Filipinos' deep love of music and dance was depicted in the cultural presentation. For some, attendance meant a week's travel and great sacrifice. President Kimball opened the first session by giving the Filipino saints greetings from church leaders and members worldwide. His announcement about the Tokyo Temple had dramatic impact here, too. The Hong Kong and Taiwan conferences were held simultaneously. Because Hong Kong is so compact and densely populated, the saints had to travel only a short distance to reach the Lee Theater, where the conference was held.
We pray the Lord to bless you, each and every one of you.
President Kimball's talk and a taped program of songs by the Tabernacle Choir were telecast nationally.
We bless you and leave those choice blessings upon you and your families.
The fifth and concluding Area General Conference in the Orient was held in the Changchung Sports Palace in Seoul, Korea. 20 years to the day earlier, in 1955, President Joseph Fielding Smith dedicated Korea for the preaching of the gospel. The outstanding cultural show included many aspects of Korean culture. The 9,000 Koreans at the opening session heard the prophet express his great love for them.
It's a great privilege to have this conference in Korea. We highly admire that we have President W. Kimball in Korea.
And my instinct, I should say, my Mormon instinct tells me the fact that President Spence W. Kimball is a prophet of the Lord. And I sustain and support him with all my heart, all my strength. And I have a testimony that this is the Church of Jesus Christ.
1975, the year of the missionary, of some historic church firsts, of worldwide gospel growth. But ultimately, 1975 will be remembered not as a year of individual accomplishments, excellent as they were, but rather as one in which the saints worked together with renewed resolve in response to President Kimball's appeal for improved performance. This was the Church in Action, 1975.